Hey everyone, welcome back to Admix for another episode of Giving the Game Away. And today we're going to do something a little bit differently, and we're going to have a conversation about Admix and especially the launch of Admix 2.0. And with
Mm.
me, as always, Ian.
Hello. How's it
How are
going?
you?
I'm good. How are you, Sam?
Yeah, it's going really well. Really exciting week with the launch of the new version of Admix, new
Yeah.
plugin, and so on. So a
That
lot of great stuff happening.
must be a huge relief to get it out. I know
This was
people.
one of the main objectives of the year. So it's not a small release. It's really a transition from us being, just a prototype, a project to really a commercial stable solution. So
Mm.
yeah, it's great. But the uptake with the customers is working really well at the moment. So I can't complain.
No, of course. I know we've been going through like a month of like hardcore testing that went really well before this. Writing the newsletter was always fun because I always want to update things, and it's always just good news. But the testing's going great. Keep an ear
Right.
out for releases. Yeah, it's really good. So I want to talk about the features of 2.0 a little bit later. I thought it'd be good to go right back to the start and talk about the first features of Admix, because obviously it wasn't just birthed into the world fully formed. Where did it start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the whole idea started when I was a game publisher myself. So I had a small studio. We had 6 people. It was back 6 years ago already, and we were building small games like today are called hyper casual games. Back in the day, they were not. They didn't have that name yet. And trying to monetize our small user base, we run into various solutions on the market that are doing interstitial ads or rewarded videos, and I just didn't like using them. It felt like something that we didn't like using, our users didn't like. It sounded like a very unnecessary evil that no one actually enjoyed using. And for me, that was a big red flag. We can do something better about this. And so the main blocker for that solution is that on one end, as a game developer, you're trying to get your users to spend as much time as possible in your game. The more time they spend in the game, the more things you can sell them, the more likely they are to invite other friends, the more ads they can see. So the time, the retention, the time in game is probably the most important KPI as a game developer. And then on the other end, you're trying to monetize those users. But this is the thing: the mere fact of putting an ad in the game would shorten that time. So, but you're trying to maximize that time to monetize your users more. But as you monetize them, you shorten that time. So for me, this was almost shooting yourself in the foot. It's not something that is scalable, just because you can't possibly, pull on one side and push on the other side. So how can we build a model that actually is conducive to help people spend more time in the game rather than less time in the game? And that's how we started with the idea of Admix. And the idea has always been to integrate branded content, initially more adverts, but we always had the idea of doing more comprehensive integration with products and so on inside the gameplay, so that the player can interact with those items in a way that actually helps them maybe complete a level or give them a reward, so that they have an incentive to engage with it without interrupting the whole experience. So that premise hasn't changed, and we have been following that, very closely. That's our dream. That's our North Star. But in terms of features, of course, over time, we started small by supporting a couple formats. Now we support a lot more different formats. We support videos as well. We're soon expanding into 3D, and so it's been quite a ride. And listening to our publishers to really figure out what they need, what is the next thing we should prioritize. This has been probably the most rewarding part of the story, because you really feel that you're building something that people actually want, and they are requesting features and they want things to be done in a different way. So I'm constantly amazed and learning about the complexity of game development, and how many different settings there is, even if you're supporting Unity and between versions, and the way that you are compiling the game. Like, there's just an infinite amount of things that we need to support. So I would say that over time we just got better and better at kind of solving for all these different use cases, but the main concept of Admix has remained the same.
That's good. I mean, do you think that complexity is the biggest challenge that you sort of faced in bringing this pretty unusual advertising solution to the market?
From a technical point of view, I would say yes.
Okay.
Obviously, we're trying to bridge the gap between the world of advertising, which is traditionally adapted to the web or maybe in-app, but really it's for desktop and web, and the world of gaming, which is native code. So we had to build incredibly smart technology to translate the ad formats coming from the advertisers into a language that the game understands, and not render it, 30 seconds after, but render it almost before the game loads, so that if you're playing the game, it looks like the ad is actually part of the scene. So that was really, really complex. And then making it work for all kinds of games, all kinds of devices behind the game as well. Small old Android device is not going to render at the same speed as the new iPhone or the new Samsung phone, for example. So we need to adapt for all this stuff, which is really technical. But overall, I would say that the biggest challenge is not technical. It is really to educate the brands and the advertisers that there is a new channel for them, and that spending their money on Google and Facebook and TV, all of that is great, but there is a new kid on the block, and it's gaming. And there's a huge audience with a huge attention. They're desperate. It's completely untapped audience at the moment. So brands really need to understand that, and that market shift, which has happened a lot this year with the pandemic, of course, and other games like Fortnite and Roblox doing an amazing job at bringing gaming into the culture. That is probably the biggest challenge that we still have in front of us.
Yeah, it's always going to be a big education one. I know the company started with a big focus on VR, which sort of doubles the challenge because a lot of advertisers aren't aware of VR in the first place. And then you've got to explain this ad technology on top of it. That must have been very difficult.
Yeah, definitely was. So the thing about, if you look at, what is a mainstream media channel, that's basically what brands are looking for to distribute their message. So it's basically three things. The first one is scale. You need to reach a lot of users. Second one is attention. You need those users to be engaged with the channel. And the third one is the infrastructure. You need to have infrastructure to distribute that message. So if you look at TV or the internet, they obviously tick the three. Gaming has the scale. It has the attention. It's just lacking the infrastructure, and that is what we're providing. Now, VR, AR doesn't have the scale. It does have the attention, but it reaches at the moment a very small fraction of the population. So there's an extra challenge there. But the reason why we focused on that first, it's actually a really interesting point, is that when I first started, my thesis at the time was that I knew that this could work in games, but I thought that the existing solution would be working too well already, so that we wouldn't be able to compete against a Google Ad Mob or Unity Ads, for example. And that if you add Admix on top of that, it wouldn't be enough to make a significant incremental revenue for the publisher. Whereas on VR, no one is touching it. And so we had a blank field in front of us. But when we started to release our SDK to VR developers, and they started to put it in their non-VR games and started to see pretty significant revenue increase, this is when we started realizing that actually there is probably something there, and we can actually compete on the mobile ecosystem as well, because we believe that the way that advertising is done currently is not really adapted for brands, much more for performance advertisement, which opens a big, big, big channel for this huge market, which is brand advertising.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, the things that I really enjoy about Admix, beyond the fact that they pay me, the product immediately drew me in right from the start. And the thing that I really enjoy about it is both that it's no code, so it's beneficial to developers, and that it's an addition to other monetization solutions, but it doesn't detract from the user experience. So as a developer, you're making more money, but your players aren't going to be having a worse time for it. The no code side of it, was that something that was there from the start? Is that something you recognized as an important thing? Because that's a barrier for a lot of other solutions, I find.
Yeah, well, we didn't really set out and think, okay, we need to do a no code tool. But what we knew that we had to do was to minimize the friction, both on the developer side and on the advertiser side. And so, by trying to minimize the friction, by having that big vision on making it as simple as possible, we eventually decided that this was the simplest way to do it. We had actually prototyped other ways to do it, where you had like an API key that you get in the plugin, and you have to put it in the web console to link your projects together. And it was a lot simpler to implement this way. But we were always driven by that vision to make things happen in a much simpler way. And so I love the first part of the process with Admix, when you install the plugin inside Unity and click save, and then you see your app appearing on the web console without doing anything, with the right name, which is fetched from the project. All of that, adds to the ease of use. It's almost happening like magic. And I think as we are, building up our team, we're trying to do more and more of these features, these little things that just make your life easier and delight the user.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's always exciting. So let's talk about the plugin and where we are with 2.0 now. I'll go through the feature list that we sort of, the big ones that we announced in no particular order. So the UI, it's in a really good place. It looks great. It's very accessible. Was it always so neat, I guess is the right way of putting it? Was it difficult getting to this stage?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the previous platform. It was always quite easy to use, I would say. The UX was great, but we didn't have the same resources. It was something that we only had a few developers working on. So they did an amazing job building it with the resources that we had at the time. And then we learned from our publishers, what kind of controls are they expecting to see? How can we make it simpler for them? Are there things that they don't need that we can remove? And then eventually we move towards a much better design. Now we have, a designer, front-end engineers, back-end engineers. So we actually have a real team. We have over 25 engineers in total. So we have a real team that can actually build a commercial product. I think it's, it makes sense to do things in step. I'm really happy that we first had a prototype, then we have a version 1, and now about 2 years in, we have a version 2, and there will be a version 3 as well. You need those steps to be able to progress and show that the market actually need your solution. You can't just spend a year building everything from scratch and then figure out, oh, actually, that's not what we should have done. So iterative development is the way to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that does raise a good question. Did you ever have like a chicken and egg problem between, because obviously you need devs to be using Admix and then advertisers to be on Admix. I'm guessing the programmatic side of things sort of solved the advertiser thing, so that it wasn't really a chicken and egg thing. Am I right in guessing that?
So it was a bit, but yes, you're right also in saying that because of the way that we're doing it, which is completely different from a lot of solutions out there, which is to not have built the two sides, but we built the side for the game developers, because that's our customers, really. This is who we're trying to please predominantly. And then we plugged it into huge advertising networks that have access to advertisers already. So there is, because of that, we basically, it's plug and play. You get inventory, so games integrating our SDK, and immediately you get some spend. But actually, this is not how it initially just started. We already run some campaigns, direct campaigns, before we were plugged programmatically, because to be plugged programmatically and for it to work, you need a certain scale. So if you just put one small game, no one's going to buy it. They don't even see the traffic is too small. So what we did at the time to solve this problem is basically we lined up a bunch of publishers. We found that when we talk to the publishers, they would understand that, okay, we do not have demand right now, but we will have demand in 2 weeks. So please integrate and wait for it effectively. While on the other side, the advertiser side, they have very kind of firm schedules. Okay, we have this campaign starting next week. Whether you're ready or not, they're not going to wait for us. So we had to manage the publisher's expectation. And then I think we got the first publisher, which was a VR game, actually integrated maybe a day before that campaign started. And immediately we started to see a ramp up. So we ended up being really lucky that it worked. And that's just a testament of the work that our tech team is doing.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward a year and a half, we're serving, millions and millions of ads every day. I think we're going to reach now close to 7 billion available impressions this month. So it's been growing really great, and mainly it's because we've built stable technology to power all of that.
And it is plug and play. It's stable, but it's so accessible as well. And that leads me on to the developer dashboard. I think this is my favorite UI of the update. It's just a beautiful thing to look at. Again, this must have taken a lot of iteration.
Yeah, well, so we knew pretty much what we wanted to do from a usability point of view, but then we also thought about what functionalities will we add in the future, so that when they actually arrive, we don't need to rebuild the whole thing. So this is why, it's always difficult to know when to stop. Do I think ahead for the next 5 years, or do I build what I think is right for now? We have an incredible designer. We have incredible front end people. So implementing that part was not actually the hardest part. It's really the infrastructure powering all of that is difficult. But a lot of advertising companies, they have very strong technologies. They don't have generally a very user-friendly or very usable tools. There's a lot of big companies out there, not in play, I'm talking, advertising generally, where you basically need a person to show you around the UI for you to start using the platform. And for me, it's like, okay, well, surely we can build a better platform, so you don't need someone to actually take you through it. Yeah. So that's basically how we started it. And we have this advantage that we are basically getting started. So we can really build everything the way we want it. We're not just bolting on features on top of, legacy features. So because of that, we have this strong advantage. And I think we've built something that is really robust and will act as a base for the next few years to come.
Yeah. Has there always been a developer dashboard right from the get-go? Or was it once like a back-end thing?
No, there was always. In fact, another fun fact for you there, we had this, my first idea, probably pretty naive, was that everything would happen on this web dashboard. And so instead of just seeing a list of your ad placement, when you create them in Unity, then they appear in a list on the dashboard. In the first iteration from the Unity plugin, you could export your scene, which would create an outline of your game and then upload it on the web, so that from that platform, you could actually browse your game in a WebGL environment and you would see where the placement were. So that instead of just having a list and maybe you don't know which is which, you could actually go and see it the way it is. But that was incredibly complex. First of all, for big games, it just didn't work. So we had to lower down the poly count to export that model, and then it didn't look like anything. Game developers were not comfortable with us exporting their design onto their platform. It was taking a really awfully long time. And then when you had the scene there, sometimes you couldn't see the ads. So it's just not a good idea in retrospect. But I love the concept of making it, such a visual thing. That's always been part of our DNA.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, WebGL is such a that is a very cool idea. First of all, WebGL is not something that we're doing right now, is it? For export for the final releases of a game?
Not yet. No, we're really focusing on in-app at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
But the worst part of all of this, right, is game developers were never ticking the box to actually export this beautiful thing. So that was an example of us just saying, yeah, that's great, let's do that. And then we realized that no one was even using it, and it didn't work properly. So that feature is now being totally removed.
Oh God, that was a good idea. Okay, so other good ideas. Another thing that I really like about Admix is the creative renderer, in that you can make ads really fit into an environment with shaders and materials and stuff like that. That seems like quite a complicated thing to have early on. I know we've gone through a bunch of iterations now. When did that sort of come into the picture?
Yeah, so what's difficult there is the fact that we are taking any type of adverts from advertisers who are not very strict with the input the format that they're giving us. So it's not only a picture ad or a video, it could be a piece of JavaScript or a piece of HTML, right? Without going into details, we have to support all these different formats. And that's what's difficult to support that and allow shaders on top of these different structures, because by default Unity does not render rich media, it doesn't render HTML. So we've built this creative renderer that is able to take any format as an input and then basically create a texturized environment that Unity understands, on top of which we can apply the shaders and the textures and so on. If someone from the tech team is hearing this, I'm sorry, that's probably not the right words that I used, but that is the concept. And so that is really the difficulty here. If you just put a normal image into Unity, you can have your shaders, you can do everything. But adding that on top of our programmatic ad delivery was the biggest challenge. And it's something that we have a small team, actually native development team, that is focusing on that particular challenge. And that is a big differentiator for us. This is why we're able to take any adverts from any ad partners and integrate it inside the game. And when you start playing the game, the ad is always almost already there. You don't even see it. You can't perceive the difference in timing, because it takes less than, the auction time is about 200 milliseconds, and the ad is then rendered immediately. So that is just another step that we have gone to make sure that the experience of the user is always paramount.
Absolutely. And this is partly why I'm so excited about 3D ads, which I know we're working on, and it's very much the future of the industry in a lot of ways. Having physical objects just already be in the scene that are branded, and that being a programmatic thing, or even just a hard-coded thing, it's a very exciting step.
Definitely is, and it's already happening. Fortnite, Roblox, League of Legends, they are already offering skins. At the moment, it's very much hard-coded. It's very much an agency type of partnership. And of course, Admix is not an agency. We're a technology company. So what we're doing is building the infrastructure to support that in the near future.
Nice. Yeah, it's exciting. Slightly less exciting, but definitely worth talking about. Reporting, another big feature. It's taken another step in advancement. This must have been something super important to put in right at the start. I imagine developers and advertisers really wanted this data. Is it something that you really pushed to have right away, or did it sort of come a few iterations in?
Yeah, so we always had some level of reporting, which is the performance, the revenue that you're making, how many impressions, CPM, and so on. But of course, logging these parameters, you need to have a stable data infrastructure to be able to do so. And so that really evolved over time, and we learn from our publishers what are they expecting, also what are the advertisers expecting. And as we move more into understanding the player behavior inside the game as well, there will be a ton more data points that we can extract to show the publishers the performance of their inventory. So that is very much work in progress. This was probably one of the biggest piece of the work to build our ETL and data structures. But it's the basis of everything to assess performance. That's our main priority, is to show that channel is delivering good performance both from the publishers and for the advertisers. And for that, we need reliable data to be able to look at.
Absolutely. I mean, again, because the data just goes over my head. The UI is excellent once again. The reporting, I imagine one of the biggest challenges for reporting in games was knowing when users are looking at adverts. I know we've got the gaze tracking technology. Was that a difficult problem to solve, or was the solution sort of in Unity in a different form already?
Yeah, so gaze tracking, it's something that mainly we use for VR and AR, which is really understanding where people are looking and for how long, and then helps assess the performance of the adverts. And then this is information that can be passed on to the advertisers in a totally anonymous way, of course, just to tell them if the ad has been seen or not seen. So it's kind of a variation of the way that viewability is assessed on the web today. And some of this stuff is part of Unity already. Gaze tracking and other things are functions that you can use from there, but tying it into part of the advertising ecosystem was the difficulty. It's about making these things something that advertisers on the other side actually understand and use to assess performance.
Nice. Okay. Completely different tack. Another big feature. I'll sort of lock these in together. Team management and app versioning. Incredibly useful. I use a lot of writing apps that have the same things, and I use them most days. These are absolutely new, aren't they? These are new to 2.0.
Yes.
Yeah. Were they planned from the start, or did they sort of appear in your mind further down the line, or at someone's mind?
Yeah, no, this is a great example of features that were not really planned initially. So one of them, the user management system, enables a publisher to invite other developers from their team and change the permissions so that someone from the finance team might see something different than someone on the developer team. And this was just requested from our publishers. This is someone that says, look, we have a lot of contractors. I do not want them to see how much money we're making. Can we hide the reporting features from them? And so that's basically what we built on for that version. And then the app versioning is a bit more technical. So it's basically a way to sync the project that you're working on with the app that is currently live in the store. And before that, we only had one project. So you might have multiple versions of apps that were used by different part of your audience, but they were all referring to one project. So it was a bit of a messy reporting. So we just cleared that up. But these are great examples of features that were not really features, more like, we were forced into building that to make the product better.
Okay. I mean, it's a sort of a happy accident when you discover stuff like that, I imagine.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Especially if multiple publishers are starting to request it, then you know that you're onto something that is actually needed.
Yeah. Okay. So to wrap it up, as we've gone through the major feature sets, we're always sort of looking to the future, and from the sounds of it, always have been. Is there a feature that you've wanted to get into Admix for a long time now that you haven't been able to, or is there something that you're just incredibly excited about bringing to the platform at some point?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about the more native, better integrated formats that we can integrate, such as the 3D stuff, which is the topic of a different podcast and different discussion. But putting banners, putting videos inside games, this is not our dream, right? Let's just be clear about that. This is not the long-term vision. It's not about plastering banners inside the game. We're doing that. We have the technology that enables developers to do that in a really nice way today. But of course, our goal has always been to build models that are more profitable for the publishers and things that are creating a better user experience. And so if you imagine, you have, did I give this example already? You have a pair of Nike sneakers that you can buy for virtual currency inside the game. And if you put them on your feet, your avatar is running faster. And then if you do that for a bit, you might get an email from Nike and you get a discount on the real shoes in a real shop. And you can see a version of the shoes that no one else can see. They have actually done that in Fortnite. But it was a one-off. It was something that happens once. It was more of an experiment, not a full business model. And so we want to democratize this stuff. We want to make it work for every game developer so that they can integrate not only just ads and videos, which is already a great start, but also products, branded content that actually helps the player finish the game or reward the player in some way. So that's really my dream, how we can integrate the world of brands, which is providing an incredible amount of revenue to help developers build even better games.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're a big advocate of the metaverse idea, that basically life and the digital world are just going to cross over more and more. And integrating brands into the digital space in a democratized way, it just sort of makes sense.
It's inevitable. I mean, it's inevitable. We are spending more and more time online. I think, this pandemic has sped up the progress there. If I may say that. I mean, it's just, it's a transition that was already happening. And I think this crisis, the fact that we're all stuck at home, it just make that happen even faster. And we see all these, Roblox and the Wave VR, which is doing virtual concert, all of these apps are surging massively. And so it's a bit of a no-brainer that as we spend more and more time in these environments, brands eventually want to capitalize on that attention. And it's actually a good thing. It is a good thing, when advertising starting to happen on the internet, it helped millions of small businesses to actually find their customers, find their audience, and Facebook as well. Now, has it been abused? Of course. Has it been done the right way? No, not necessarily. But we have a chance now to move into another channel and help, build that in the right way. And we are one of the only ones that are really building that with the player first. I used to be a game developer myself. We have people in the team that have built games themselves. Like, we're not a team of ad people. We're a team of game developers that are trying to make sure that we're doing this in the right way. And I think this media is so rich that we can really create amazing experiences that work for everyone and create a really successful digital economy inside the games.
I really like that idea of a sort of a clean slate. It's sort of like moving to Mars with all of the learning that we've taken from Earth, and hopefully we won't fuck up Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you have to look at it on the positive way, right? Like, this will happen anyway. It's inevitable, and I think it's better if it's us doing it the right way than someone else maybe with different intentions. So we are, at the end of the day, if we don't do it the right way, it's not going to work. Players are going to complain, and then game developers are not going to want to integrate our solution. So it's in our best interest to make it work for the players, because at the end of the day, they dictate what is happening there. And so that is our sole focus. We want to make an experience that is seamless, that they actually enjoy, and hopefully help game developers make more money to create even more awesome games. Well, thanks everyone for following. Please make sure to follow us at Admix Play, and we will see you next week for another episode.